This is a book review of the Ant-Man and Giant Man Epic Collection. Now it should be Giant Man and Wasp. The Man in the Anthill. What does it include? Well, Volume 1 includes stories from 1962 to 1964 and includes Tales to Astonish 27, then there's a bit of a gap, 35 to 59. Sadly, it doesn't include all the stories up to issue 69. So there should hopefully be a volume 2. Of course, that would include the Marvel Features work and other stories. And also, this collection is slightly odd in that it doesn't include the Ant-Man stories that he did in the Fantastic Four, etc. Or Giant Man stories. Now, of course, you probably wouldn't want to include all the Avengers stories, but you certainly should include perhaps more. It's a good book, and it goes, let's see, it's about 450 pages, and it came out in 2015. Now, there is an essential volume, and that's in black and white, and that I think does include a little bit more, I think all the stories. So hopefully there will be a volume 2 at some point. So what happens? Right, start, of course, some of the artists, Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, Kirby, Don Heck, and Ayers. And so there's a variety of different drawing styles. Actually, there's a lot of different drawing styles, even with, obviously, the different artists. Now, the Wasp short stories are also included. That's pretty good. It's all in colour predominantly. There is some black and white in the bonus section at the back. So you've got the first Ant-Man story. You've got Hank Pym. Now, what happens? He works out a serum that he drops onto his skin, and he becomes Ant-Man. Well, he doesn't become Ant-Man, he's still just Hank Pym in this story, which is really odd because you've got all this blah, blah, blah. I'm normal. Then there's a gap. Suddenly, issue 35. Now, Ant-Man really came out as very earliest stories, January 1962, so it was very close to the very FF1. Return of the Ant-Man. Well, as he wasn't called Ant-Man in the first one, it's a very odd title, but you got the origin again, and you've got him battling. He's got an army of ants, which is actually pretty useful, I would think. So he's got his cybernetic helmet, which sounds very impressive. He's got decoders, transmitters, receivers, computers, mini-computers. He was a pretty intelligent guy, and also he's pretty strong as well. He learns he's got the strength. Obviously, he's very similar to the Atom stories in the DC Comics. So Ant-Man's Revenge. They did these sort of stories. They were very short stories, but also they split them up, part 3. So you had 3 or 4 parts in this. And you got this. The villains were pretty ropey. The early day villains, Challenge of Comrade X. Though I must admit, having a guy standing over top of me with a big boot like that would be pretty chilling. But he's got the usual communist stories and these various things. They're still good stories though. But he did not seem to meet the good old Doc Doom characters. He didn't really develop those. Even the Protector, this one is sort of like featuring Ant-Man, the Unknown Protector. He can't be unknown because we can see. However, good stories. Jack Kirby, brilliant artwork. The restoration is superb. And I love this bit as well. I love these sections here. You've got the don't miss all the amazing superheroes, which everyone's talking about. So you've got Human Torch, Incredible Hulk, Fantastic Four, and Mighty Thor. So clearly that's the 4, along with poor old Ant-Man. He was never a contender. Betrayed by the ants. Now this is the first real sort of villain that turned up a bit. He was like a mad thinker. He was the leader, egghead. I don't think this character would have been developed nowadays. Well, maybe he would go. I don't know. Somehow, I suspect not. Vengeance of the Scarlet Beetle. Pretty good. But of course you've got ants. And you've got the Beetle. No one thought about Beetle Man. But no, you've got Scarlet Beetle. And it's a good story. It's a good old. Then the day the Ant-Man failed. Again, and the hijacker. He had a string of really ropey villains to face. But decent art. Yeah. And then we got a lovely Don Heck one there. Great. Prisoner of Slave World. Even there he's sort of the voice of doom. Ant-Man, you cannot help yourself. You must do as I command. Blah, blah, blah. The voice of doom. Again, sort of Kilgrave kind of thing. Is this the end of Ant-Man? So, the Mad Master of Time. I mean, actually, when you look back at it, I think Iron Man also had a string of really pretty ropey until he got going. There was some, but poor old Ant-Man really did suffer from Creature from the Cosmos. Now, this is a classic one because it's got you learn a little bit about Hank Pym's past. Maria is his former wife who died. Not spoiling anything there. Obviously, she doesn't turn up anywhere else. And then you got the Wasp that turns up. Janet, she looks much like. And then, of course, you got this really ropey villain again, but you've got the introduction of the Wasp. And the Wasp is one of my favourite characters. I love the Wasp. She has changed all over the place. Brilliant stories. So it's great to see her into the story. And I think that's really was the thing that was lacking. I think as soon as you got the Wasp in the stories, I think, improved fairly dramatically. Then you got Ant-Man, and they're against Egghead again. Looking, actually, truly looking a lot rougher. Now this time, Art Don Heck. Actually, look, when you look at these things, you think, wow, it's amazing when you see the artist. I guess it depends on the inking, because that's but poor old Egghead looks really different. Then you got, of course, this is an era for Clue where it's going for the next story. A lovely story when they're on holiday. Cyclops walks the earth. Actually, that's the earliest issue I've got. Cyclops walks the earth. And you've got the Wasp again. But of course, we've got the Giant Man to come soon. Trago, the man with the magic trumpet. A bit similar to the earlier story that we had with where the man had to control people. Another similar story. But a decent enough tale. Really not out of place, probably in one of those sort of Journey into Mysteries, Tales to Astonish sort of short stories. And that was the trouble with a lot of these. These felt like those sort of stories. Porcupine. You're getting a selection of villains. Now, what they needed was a Masters of Evil, sort of all the group turned up. But now you've got Giant Man. Giant Man kicks in. And that's pretty good. He suddenly realises he can become, you got the living eraser. I'm being erased, transported to, but it's good. Human, I love this story. This was when, actually, I remember getting a black and white issue of this one in the UK, and the Human Top, of course, a bit like Quicksilver. I think he only ever faced Quicksilver a few times, and of course, Whirlwind later. The Human Top, Showdown with the Human Top. And that's a brilliant bit of art. Yeah, I love that one. That's Jack Kirby. Tell the difference suddenly. But it's still classic Human Top. Then you got the Wasp story. Wasp tells a story. And I like those little short stories. But of course, they were just basically framing elements for basically a story that was from the older style. Black Knight Strikes. So you're getting a bit more decent villains suddenly kicking in. Porcupine again. So you're getting a sort of good Porcupine. When Wakes Colossus. This is another tale with the Wasp. El Toro. He really did struggle with the villains. This poor old Human Top again. Human Top. The Magician. The Coming of the Magician. And again, you still got more of the Wasp tells a tale. She didn't really have she had a few that were adventures where she was actually involved. But this was still much in the old style of Strange Tales, etc. Amazing Spider-Man. So you had the Spider-Man story turning up here. It's pretty good with Egghead. And, well, this time you've actually got the Wasp as a key character. And they should have done that from the start. I mean, I think the Wasp should have had her own comic. Never ever understood why the Wasp has always been a secondary character. Really good character. And also why, in a sense, you didn't have Giant Woman. I mean, that Giant Man, why not Giant Woman? She should have worked out how to suddenly grow to massive size. Massive oversight there. The Colossus. especially when she was it would have been quite handy in the storyline. The Magician and the Maiden, Larry Lieber, and then you finish off with the Hulk, which is a nice story because what happens with the Hulk, of course, is he joins Tales to Astonish and they share the magazine until Submariner takes over. So you've got some bonus at the back. You've got a few lovely. Now there is a brilliant IDW Artist Edition where you've got the whole of the story, Man in the Anthill, and that's brilliant. But this is a good collection. I would have to say it's got the weakest set of villains. The stories are middling to sort of, they never really, and I can guess that's the reason why poor old Giant Man faded away a bit. But of course he was a member of the Avengers, obviously became Goliath, Yellow Jacket, so he went on to bigger and better things. But it was always a pity that he never really had a good comic run. So, good issue.